Alright guys, so we are back with episode number 4. In the last video, we left off with literals and data types, and I said that we were going to go over arithmetic operators. So we're going to talk about that, because there's no doubt in your programming career that you're going to need to be doing some basic arithmetic, such as adding two numbers together, adding two variables, dividing, multiplication, exponentiating. Well, we'll get to that later. And it could just range from just basic arithmetic to advanced calculus, but we're not going to get into that crazy stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my text editor, and this is just where we left off. Okay, I'm zooming a little bit so you guys can see the text a lot better for those who are on like small devices or small resolution screens. I don't know. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there comes a point where you're going to need to do some basic arithmetic. So let me go ahead and create a new file real quick. Let's just call this basicmath.js. Okay. And let's go ahead and just declare a couple variables. So let's go ahead and apply the concepts that we have learned so far, right? So far we've learned how to declare variables, right? We also learned about different data types as well. We also learned about the difference between a literal value and a variable value. So let's actually go ahead and apply everything that we know so far. We don't know too much, but we can still take these little concepts and use them as building blocks for the big picture. Okay, so let's go ahead and declare a variable. Let's say var. I'm going to call this, let's just see, hourly rate. Now, you can probably guess that the data type of this variable is going to be a numeric type. It's going to be a number. Okay, more specifically, it's going to actually be a float, because typically hourly rates do have floating points. It's not always going to be an integer. It can be like something like $39.50 per hour. So let's go ahead and do 45.25. That is our hourly rate. That is how much we are being paid hourly. That is actually a very good hourly rate. And let's go ahead and create another variable. This is going to be called total hours worked, and we can leave a comment. Again, you don't have to say something like total hours worked per week. You don't have to go too crazy with that. You can just say total hours worked, or you can just say hours worked like that. You don't have to be too crazy with the variable names. As long as you can recognize what that variable is, you can recall what it means. That's the most important part. You can also leave a comment too for other developers to look at it. Okay, I don't think I've mentioned comments yet. I don't think I've formally introduced comments yet, but we'll get to that later. So hours worked, let's just say, on a typical work week, we typically work 40 hours a week. So let's just do 40. Cool. Okay. So we have two variables declared. Okay. All I'm doing here is I'm assigning the numeric literal value 45.25, which is a float, to the variable hourly rate. Then I'm assigning the numeric value 40, it's a literal value again, to the variable hours worked. And what I want to do is I want to actually calculate the total gross pay that I'm going to be getting for this 1 week. Okay, this is 1 week of work. Okay, and to do that, in the real world, you just multiply these two numbers together. Very simple, right? Because for every hour we work, we're getting paid $45.25. So we're going to go ahead and say var weekly pay is going to be hourly rates. So we're referencing the variable value. Okay, so the value of hourly rate is 45.25. And we're going to multiply this value by the value of hours worked. And you can probably imagine, to multiply, you use the asterisk. Now, this is actually called an operator. Don't call it a symbol. It's called an operator. This is the multiplication operator. Okay? So we're basically taking hourly rate, multiplying it by hours worked. Okay, and the asterisk conveniently is the multiplication operator. And to actually go in depth on this operator, it's actually a binary operator. And what that means is that binary operators, you require two operands or two elements to produce one final result. And it makes sense too, because all we're doing is we're taking hourly rate, which is one operand, we're taking the other operand hours worked, we're multiplying together to compose the weekly pay, which is one final result. So you're taking two things, combining into one. Okay, so let's go ahead and console.log weekly pay, and let's actually print out a more detailed statement. So we're going to also apply our knowledge of string concatenation. So we're going to create a string this is a string literal, okay? And we're going to say your weekly gross pay, colon, space, and we're going to use the plus sign. I haven't talked about the plus sign yet, but don't worry, we're going to get to that. But right now, we're concatenating this string with the value of this variable. Whoops. And if I log this to the console, so we're going to do node basic math.js. And look at that, your weekly gross pay, 1,810 or 1810. And I can add the dollar sign there too to make it look nicer. There you go. Your weekly gross pay, $1,810. Perfect. Okay, so that's the multiplication. Usually we'd start off with addition, subtraction, but I like to do it a different way. This was the first example that I could think of. But like multiplication, there's also the addition operator, the subtraction operator, division operator, and there's also the modulus operator, which we'll get to that at the very end. So let's go ahead and do some basic addition. So let's say let's total up the total amount of hours we worked as well as overtime. So let's declare another variable. Let's say var overtime hours. And let's say we worked 10 extra overtime hours that 1 week. It was a busy work week. We had to stay a little bit overtime to finish the software. And so we worked 10 extra hours. Now, typically, when you work overtime, you would get paid what's called time and a half, which is also known as overtime wage. Time and a half applies to holiday pay as well. Typically, time and a half is where you take half of your hourly rate and add it to that base hourly rate. Okay, so right now, what we're going to do is we're going to say var total hours worked. Okay, so this is going to be, as you may have guessed, hours worked plus overtime hours, like that. Okay, notice how I'm using the camel case convention for our variable names, just so it looks much more cleaner and more concise and more beautiful. Okay, cool. So now we have used the plus sign, which is the addition operator. And as you can guess, it pretty much takes two operands. It is also a binary operator. It takes two operands, combines it into one final result. And you can definitely assume that the value of total hours worked is going to be 50. So if I do console.log total hours worked, and let's also concatenate this as well. So now, this is where I can actually explain this whole string concatenation thing. Okay, so notice how when we use this plus operator, this plus operator, over here we're adding two numbers together, right? But notice how up here we're also using the plus. But notice how we're not adding two numbers. We're actually, it may seem like we're adding a string with a number. Now remember, JavaScript is a dynamic language, so it's always going to be using type inference. Okay, we can see that over here this is a string. Okay, and we are using this plus operator with a numeric type. So logically, JavaScript knows, the engine knows that we're not adding two numbers together. We're actually concatenating a string with a number. So the output of that is going to be a string. Okay, and if you want to be a little bit more precise, maybe we could do something like type of this, wrap this in parentheses, and if we do node basic math.js, you're going to see the type of this final result ends up being a string because we are using the engine itself is using type inference. It's concatenating the string with this numeric value to produce a result of a string. Pretty cool. Just wanted to mention that just in case you guys were a little bit confused. But yes, so over here though, since both of these values are numeric, we are adding, remember, type inference. Pretty awesome. Okay, so total hours worked, you can see it's 50. Okay, now since we have overtime hours, we need to also calculate the overtime pay. Now what we're going to do is, now that we have the total hours worked, that's 50. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and take the hourly rate, we're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to add that current value to the current hourly rate to get the overtime rates. Okay, so we're going to declare another variable. We're going to say var overtime rate, and we're going to say this is going to be equal to hourly rate divided by 2. Okay, so remember, overtime pay is you take half of your hourly rates, and then you take that half, you add it to the hourly rate itself. So what we need to do is we need to put this in parentheses. Remember, when it comes to arithmetic and programming, it also follows the order of operation. Like certain operators have its own precedence. Okay, so we need to make sure we're using these parentheses to wrap our expressions to make sure that this over here is calculated first. Likewise, if you were to enter it into a calculator. Okay, so we're going to take this, we're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to add it to hourly rate. And one thing I should mention is the value hourly rate, 45.25, this never changes. All we're doing is we're taking that value, we're dividing it by 2, we're adding it with the value of hourly rate, and then we're assigning that value to overtime rate. So hourly rate stays the same at all times. So we're not mutating that at all. Okay, so you're going to see it over here. Let's just say overtime rate is equal to overtime, or we're concatenating to that. Okay, so let's run this again. Overtime rate is 67.875. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. All right, cool. So now we've gone over multiplication, addition, division. We haven't gone over subtraction. Okay, so subtraction, as you can guess, you just use the minus sign, or that's the subtraction operator, and you can use that to subtract two numbers together. Okay, let's continue on with this flow. So what we need to do next is we're going to go ahead and take the overtime rate and multiply that with the overtime hours to calculate the total overtime pay. So we're going to say var total overtime pay equals overtime hours, multiply that with overtime rate. Okay, so this is going to give us the total overtime pay. Total overtime pay. Okay, again, we're doing string concatenation, very, very simple stuff. And now, what we need to do is we need to take the weekly pay and add that to the total overtime pay to get the total weekly pay, if that makes sense. Okay, so this weekly pay is just the up to 40 hours part. It doesn't include overtime. So we need the total weekly pay. So we're going to say var total weekly pay equals weekly pay plus total overtime pay. And then we're going to do another constant log. Total weekly pay. We're going to concatenate with that. Now let's go ahead and run this program. You're going to see total weekly pay is $2,488.75. Pretty awesome. That's a lot of money for just 1 week. Okay, but that's before taxes. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and use the subtraction operator. Let's just say we need to take out taxes, right? We can set a tax rate of 33%, which is the usual standard, at least over here where I live. So we can do something like const. Let's use the const keyword. Tax multiplier equals 0.33, and then we can take let's just say var net pay equal total weekly pay times tax multiplier. Okay, now that is actually not going to get us the correct value, because all we're doing there is we're just getting the total amount of tax. Okay, so actually I should change this to total tax. Okay, so we have $821.28 is supposed to be taken out from our paycheck. That's 33% of $2,488.75. And now we're going to use the subtraction operator to subtract the total tax from the total gross overtime pay. So we're going to say var total net pay is equal to total weekly pay minus total tax. And then now we can say constant log total net pay is going to be this. And if we print this again, you can see total net pay $1,667.46. That's still a lot of money in 1 month. That's going to be about about 6,000, I think. Or roughly around 6,400, somewhere around there. It's a lot of money. Okay, cool. I think that pretty much covers all of the basic 4 arithmetic operators. Okay, now one thing that I should mention before we go on to modulus, I do want to talk a little bit about precedence, because it's important that I mention this, because if I don't, you guys would be a little bit confused. Okay, but pretty much, like in basic arithmetic, when you do the ones that you do in algebra, basic elementary math, each operation has its own, precedence, right? Like remember PEMDAS, right? Parentheses, exponents. M stands for what? Multiplication. D, division, addition, subtraction. So for example, if we had this kind of expression. Also, this is a comment, by the way. I know I haven't formally introduced it yet, but I will. Just be patient. So let's say, for example, if I have this expression, let's say 5 plus 4 times 8 minus 2. What is the outcome of this, right? We need to follow PEMDAS. There are no parentheses. There are no exponents. The next one is multiplication. So we can see the next multiplication is, then the one with the highest precedence here is this multiplication operator. And the two operands are 4 and 8. So we need to multiply that first. So 4 times 8 is 32. And then what comes next? Multiplication. There's no division. Then, so PEMDAS, PEMD, A, addition, which next comes 5. So 32 plus 5, that's 37. Minus 2, that's 35. Okay, I mean, you'd still get the same outcome if you subtract the 2 first and then add a 5, because that would be 30 plus 5. But you need to make sure you're following order of operation, which is what the same rules apply with basic arithmetic here. So I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that. So the answer to this would be 35. And if I actually log this to the console, like I can also just put in a simple arithmetic expression in this as a parameter over here. And if we logged it, you're going to see 35 would be the answer. However, let's say if I want to put some parentheses over here, right? 5 plus 4 times 8 minus 2, order of operations. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 times 8 is 72. 72 minus 2 is 70. So the answer of that should be 70. Math checks out. Perfect. Cool. Just wanted to simply mention that. And if you guys are ever confused, there are a bunch of different, you can see a bunch of different results on here. Yeah, but I wanted to formally introduce it. And it seems like Modulo is also, does have its own precedence as well. But yeah, you can look up, I will leave some resources down there below. But you can see right over here that parentheses are always evaluated first. And if the parentheses are nested, the expression in the innermost pair is evaluated first. Again, it's just like basic math. And I'm hoping that you guys know how to do basic math. And if you guys don't, definitely look up how to do some basic math. And likewise, we haven't gotten to the modulo operator yet. So I do want to make sure I'm doing that before I end this series. Okay. So let's use the modulo operator. So the modulo operator, you are going to be using it quite often, maybe not all the time, but it is very useful for a lot of different things, such as if you wanted to determine whether a number is even or odd, you would use the modulo operator. And I'll show an example once we get into if-else statements, decision structures, okay? But pretty much the modulo operator looks like this. It's a percent sign, okay? And all it does is it just gets you the remainder after division of two operands, okay? So let's say, for example, let's say for example, if we wanted to get the remainder of 5 divided by 2. So let's just say, let's do, and we can also use the let keyword. So I will use let because I've been using var a lot, but I should use let. Now there's something special about let, but I'm not going to talk about that yet because it requires knowledge of understanding scope and a bunch of other stuff like that. I'll get to that when we get to the more later advanced stuff. But for now, just think of let as like the same way of declaring a variable with var, but really it's not. There's major differences, but we're not going to talk about that for now. But so we're just going to declare a variable, let x equals 5, let y equals 2, and let's just say console.log. Let's do x mod percent sign, right? Y. So this is basically saying 5 divided by 2, but give me the remainder of 5 divided by 2, right? 5 mod 2, okay? The output of this, well, what's the remainder of 5 divided by 2? 2 goes into 5 2 times, okay? And it has a remainder of 1. So you can guess that x mod y, 5 mod 2, the output of this is going to be 1, as you can see right down over here. Hopefully you guys can see that. I know it's very small, but let me zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see that. You can see 1 is down here. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, cool. And really, that's really all Modulo does. It just gets you the remainder. This could be 50. 50 mod 2 is 0 because 2 divides 50. 50 is divisible by 2, right? 2 goes into 50 25 times. The remainder is 0. So if I run this again, the output is 0. Pretty straightforward. That's really all the modulus operator does. And I think that is it with arithmetic operators. Let's see, how much time do I have left? 20 minutes. Okay. In the next video, I'll talk a little bit more about the math API that is part of the core JavaScript itself. So yeah, pretty much this video was just all about basic arithmetic, basic, doing basic math. And I wanted to, I guess, a perfect way to introduce all these operators is by, writing a simple program that calculates the weekly gross pay with hard-coded values. And yeah, so again, if you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. Join my Discord server. I love answering questions in regards to helping people with their solutions, with their issues when it comes to programming. So again, any questions down below in the comments, or just join my Discord server, and I'll see you guys in episode 5. All right, see you guys.